A delivery girl stepped into the wrong room at the wrong time and accidentally saved a mafia boss's $40 million deal with one sentence in perfect Japanese. He asked who she really was. She said nobody. He decided to make her somebody. Now his empire bows to the girl who arrived with takeout. The crystal chandelier above the mahogany table trembled as Lorenzo Vitali slammed his fist down. Tell them we accept their terms, Marcus.
Now.
His translator, Marcus Webb, a thin man with sweat beading on his forehead, fumbled with his notes. The three Japanese businessmen across the table sat motionless, their expressions carved from stone. The one in the center, Mr. Takahashi, wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His eyes were cold. Yes, Mr. Vitali. Marcus cleared his throat and spoke in broken Japanese. Lorenzo didn't need to understand the language to know something was wrong. He'd built his empire on reading faces, and right now, Mr. Takahashi's face was turning from stone to ice. The Japanese man stood abruptly. The other two followed like shadows. Wait. Lorenzo raised his hand, but Marcus was already babbling, his Japanese turning desperate and sloppy. Mr. Takahashi's response was sharp, clipped, angry. What did he say? Lorenzo demanded. Marcus went pale. He said we've insulted his honor. I think I mixed up the words for partnership and something else. Something bad. You think? Lorenzo's voice dropped to a whisper, which was somehow more terrifying than his shout. This deal is worth $40 million, Marcus. You think you insulted them? The room held 6 of Lorenzo's men along the walls, hands near their weapons, but this wasn't a problem guns could solve. This required words, the right words, in the right language, with the right tone. Mr. Takahashi spoke again, his voice like a blade being unsheathed. He's saying Marcus swallowed. He's saying the Vitali family is run by fools and amateurs. That we wasted his time. He's leaving. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. 3 months of negotiations gone. His council would never let him live this down. The other families would smell weakness like sharks smell blood. The Japanese delegation moved toward the door. That's when someone knocked. Not now, Lorenzo barked. The door opened anyway. A young woman stepped in, maybe 25, wearing a bright red jacket with dragon walk embroidered on the breast. She carried 2 large bags of takeout food, and her dark brown hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. She looked completely out of place in a room that smelled of expensive cologne and barely contained violence. Sorry, I've got an order for her. She stopped, reading the room. Her green eyes flicked from Lorenzo to the Japanese men.
Oh.
Bad time? Get out, one of Lorenzo's guards growled. But Mr. Takahashi had turned. He glanced at the delivery bags, then at the girl, and said something in Japanese, probably telling her to leave as well. The delivery girl blinked. Then, to everyone's shock, she responded. In perfect, fluid Japanese. The room went silent. Mr. Takahashi's eyebrows rose, the first emotion he'd shown all night. He said something else, longer this time, almost like a test. The girl set down the bags and replied, her tone respectful but confident. She even bowed slightly, the exact depth that Lorenzo had seen Mr. Takahashi use earlier. What the hell is happening? Lorenzo muttered. The conversation continued. The delivery girl spoke, Mr. Takahashi listened, then responded. His shoulders, which had been rigid with offense, started to relax. One of his associates actually smiled. Marcus stood frozen, his mouth hanging open. Finally, the girl turned to Lorenzo. Okay, so, your guy here told them that your family treats business partners like dogs and that you're basically spitting on their traditions. That's not what you wanted to say, right? Lorenzo stared at her.
No.
That's not even close to what I wanted to say. Yeah, I figured. She turned back to Mr. Takahashi and spoke again in Japanese, her hands moving gracefully as she explained something. The tension in the room was evaporating like morning fog. Mr. Takahashi nodded slowly. He responded, and the delivery girl translated without missing a beat. He says he appreciates the clarification. He understands that your translator was incompetent, not that your family was intentionally disrespectful. He's willing to continue the discussion, but only if I translate. You. Lorenzo couldn't help the surprise in his voice. She shrugged. I mean, unless you want to lose $40 million over the word for dog versus partner, your call. Lorenzo looked at Marcus, who seemed to be having some kind of breakdown. Then he looked at his guards, who were as confused as he was. Finally, he looked at Mr. Takahashi, who was watching him with an expression that said, "Choose wisely." Fine, Lorenzo said. Marcus, sit down and shut up. You. He pointed at the delivery girl. What's your name? Sophia Carter. Sophia Carter, you just became my translator. Don't screw this up. For the next 40 minutes, Sophia Carter, who had walked in to deliver orange chicken and lo mein, negotiated the most important deal of Lorenzo Vitali's career. She didn't just translate, she navigated. When Lorenzo said something too blunt, she softened it. When Mr. Takahashi implied an insult, she framed it as a question. She caught cultural nuances that Marcus never would have understood, even with a dictionary. By the time the Japanese delegation stood to leave, they were shaking Lorenzo's hand. Mr. Takahashi said something to Sophia, bowed to her specifically, and walked out with his associates. The door clicked shut. Lorenzo turned to face her. Who the hell are you, really? Sophia picked up her delivery bags. Just someone who's good with languages, she smiled, but there was something guarded behind it. That'll be $42.50 for the food, by the way. Lorenzo pulled out his wallet and handed her $500 bills.
Keep the change.
And leave your number with Tony at the door. Why? Because you just saved my reputation and made me a lot of money. He studied her carefully. And I want to know how a delivery girl speaks Japanese like she grew up in Tokyo. Sophia pocketed the money, her expression unreadable. Long story. I've got time. I don't. She headed for the door, then paused and looked back. But if you need a translator again, I guess I know where to find you. She left. Lorenzo stood in the empty room, his mind racing. His instincts, the same ones that had kept him alive in this business for 20 years, were screaming that Sophia Carter was not what she seemed. But right now, she was exactly what he needed. Tony, he called. His guard stepped in. Boss. Find out everything about that girl. Everything. 3 days later, Tony dropped a thin folder on Lorenzo's desk. Everything we could find on Sophia Carter. Lorenzo opened it. The contents were disappointingly sparse. A driver's license, an address in Queens, employment records from Dragon Walk and 2 other restaurants before that. No criminal record. No college degree. No social media presence worth mentioning. That's it. Lorenzo frowned. This girl speaks fluent Japanese, and we've got nothing? She's clean, boss. Too clean if you ask me. Tony shifted his weight. 26 years old. Moved around a lot as a kid. Foster care system. No family we can trace. She's been working delivery jobs for the past 4 years. Lorenzo stared at the photo on her license. Same messy ponytail, same guarded eyes. Nobody learns Japanese delivering egg rolls. Yeah, well, she also speaks Mandarin, Italian, and Russian according to her coworker. The guy at Dragon Walk says she's weird, always reading books on her breaks, keeps to herself. Before Lorenzo could respond, his phone buzzed. Marcus Webb's name appeared on the screen. What? Lorenzo answered. Mr. Vitali, we have a problem. Marcus sounded panicked. I was reviewing our previous contracts with the Takahashi Group. The quarterly terms from the past 2 years. I think I've been translating the profit split wrong. Lorenzo sat up straight. Wrong how? We were supposed to be getting 45%. I've been telling you it was 35%. The room went very quiet. You're telling me, Lorenzo said slowly, that for 2 years, we've been leaving 10% on the table because you can't do your job. The kanji characters were similar and Lorenzo hung up. He did the math in his head. 10% of their Japanese imports over 2 years. That was somewhere around $8 million. Missing. because of bad translation. His phone rang again immediately. Mr. Takahashi's assistant. Lorenzo answered, expecting a problem. Instead, the assistant, speaking through a professional translator, sounded almost cheerful. Mr. Takahashi wanted to arrange another meeting. He'd been reviewing the terms with his own team, and there were historical discrepancies he wished to discuss. Would tomorrow work? Lorenzo agreed and ended the call, his mind spinning. He dialed Sophia's number. She'd left it with Tony, though she probably regretted that now. Hello. Her voice was cautious. I need you again. Tomorrow. Same place, 2 o'clock. I work tomorrow. Not anymore. I'll pay you $5,000 for 2 hours. Silence on the other end. Then, what's the catch? No catch. Just translation, Lorenzo paused. And maybe some answers. I don't owe you answers. You do if you want the money. Another pause.
Fine.
But I'm not doing anything illegal. Neither am I, Lorenzo lied smoothly. See you tomorrow. Sophia arrived 15 minutes early, wearing jeans and a plain black sweater instead of her delivery uniform. She looked younger somehow, less guarded. But when she met Lorenzo's eyes, that wall went back up. Before we start, Lorenzo said, I need to know something. Where did you learn Japanese? Books. Nobody learns a language that well from books. Sophia sat down across from him, her expression neutral. I had time. A lot of time. Foster care isn't exactly exciting. And Russian? Italian? Mandarin? Her jaw tightened. Is this the meeting, or an interrogation? Can't it be both? Mr. Takahashi arrived before she could answer, his associates in tow. But this time, his demeanor was different, almost apologetic. He bowed to Sophia first, then to Lorenzo. The conversation that followed was delicate. Through Sophia's translation, Mr. Takahashi explained that his own team had discovered the mistranslations. He was embarrassed. In Japanese business culture, such errors reflected poorly on both parties. However, he wanted to make things right. He's offering to pay you the missing $8 million, Sophia translated, plus an additional $2 million as an apology for the confusion. Lorenzo kept his face neutral, though inside he was stunned. $10 million. Just like that. The negotiations continued. Sophia didn't just translate, she caught things. When Mr. Takahashi used a specific phrase, she explained to Lorenzo that it meant future deals would have better terms. When Lorenzo tried to push for more, she gently reframed it in a way that didn't offend. By the end, they'd not only recovered the lost money, but secured a new contract worth $20 million annually, $5 million more than the previous terms. Mr. Takahashi left satisfied. Lorenzo sat back in his chair, staring at Sophia. You just made me $30 million. She shrugged. I just translated.
No.
You did more than that. You knew exactly what to say, how to say it. Lorenzo leaned forward. So, I'm going to ask you one more time. Who are you really? Sophia met his gaze. I'm someone who learned that words are power. When you've got nothing else, no family, no money, no home, you find power where you can. For me, it was languages. That's a nice story. It's the truth. Maybe. Lorenzo pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. 10,000. Double what I promised. Sophia opened it, counted the bills, then looked up. Why? Because I want you to work for me. Not just translation. I need someone I can trust in these meetings. You don't trust me. You just said so. No, Lorenzo agreed. But I need you. There's a difference. Sophia stood, pocketing the envelope. I'll think about it. As she walked to the door, Lorenzo called out. Sophia, if you're running from something, you should know. I'll find out eventually. She paused, her hand on the doorknob. I'm not running from anything, Mr. Vitali. I'm running toward something better. The door closed behind her. Tony emerged from the side room. Want me to keep digging? Lorenzo nodded slowly.
Yeah.
But carefully. I don't want to spook her. Not yet, anyway. The council room smelled like cigar smoke and old money. 6 men sat around the table, the heads of the Vitali family's operations. These weren't foot soldiers. These were Lorenzo's most trusted advisors, men who'd been with him since he took over from his father 15 years ago. And right now, they looked at him like he'd lost his mind. A delivery girl, Vincent Russo said, breaking the silence. He was Lorenzo's oldest friend, which gave him the privilege of speaking first. You replaced Marcus with a delivery girl. Lorenzo poured himself a whiskey. I replaced Marcus with someone who doesn't cost me millions in mistakes. She's nobody, Anthony Costa interjected. He ran the family's construction business, the legal front that laundered half their money. No background, no connections, no family. She could be anyone. FBI, CIA, hell, she could be working for the Calabrese family for all we know.
She's not, Lorenzo said calmly.
How do you know? Vincent leaned forward. Because she speaks a few languages? Lorenzo, we've built this family on trust.
Blood.
She's got neither. She's got skills we need. Skills we can buy from a dozen professional translators who actually have credentials, Michael Greco said. He was the youngest at 42, but sharp as a knife. Real translators. Not some girl who showed up with Chinese food. Lorenzo took a drink. Those real translators lost us $8 million. And she's making you look weak, Vincent shot back. The other families are already talking. Lorenzo Vitali needs a waitress to save his business, deals. You know what that sounds like. Sounds like I'm smart enough to use the right tools for the job. It sounds like you're desperate. Anthony stubbed out his cigar with more force than necessary. It sounds like the Vitali family can't handle its own affairs. Every boss in New York is watching this, Lorenzo. They're waiting to see if you've gone soft. Let them watch, Lorenzo said, but there was an edge to his voice now. And what happens when she decides to talk? Michael added. She sat in that room with Takahashi. She heard everything. Numbers, routes, timelines. You gave a stranger access to our entire Japanese operation. She signed an NDA. Vincent actually laughed. An NDA? You think a piece of paper means anything in our world? Lorenzo, listen to yourself. This isn't a corporate boardroom. This is the family. We handle problems the old way, not with lawyers and paperwork. Lorenzo set his glass down hard enough that it cracked. Nobody touches her. Is that clear? The room went silent. So it's like that, Vincent said quietly. You're protecting her. I'm protecting an asset. No, Vincent stood. You're protecting a girl who smiled at you and made you feel like a hero. I've known you 20 years, Lorenzo. I know when you're thinking with your head and when you're not. Careful, Vincent.
Someone has to say it.
Your father would never have. My father's dead. Lorenzo's voice was ice. I run this family now, and I say she stays until I decide otherwise. Anthony exchanged a look with Michael. For how long? Until she's not useful anymore. And what happens when the other families start asking questions? Michael pressed. When they want to know why Lorenzo Vitali suddenly needs a translator who isn't even Italian. You think that doesn't make us look weak? I think, Lorenzo said slowly, that I just secured a $20 million contract and recovered $8 million in lost profit. What did any of you do this week? The barb landed. Vincent sat back down, his jaw tight. We're just trying to protect you, Anthony said, his tone softer now. Protect the family. This girl, Sophia, she's a liability we can't bet. At least let us do a deeper background check. Let us bring in our people, the ones who can really dig. Lorenzo considered this. His pride was screaming at him to refuse, to tell them all to go to hell. But they weren't wrong. Sophia Carter was a mystery wrapped in an enigma, and in his world, mysteries got people killed. Fine, he said finally, but you do it quietly. I don't want her knowing we're looking into her past. And if we find something? Vincent asked. Then we deal with it. How? Lorenzo met his old friend's eyes. However we need to. Vincent nodded, but he didn't look satisfied. None of them did. One more thing, Michael said. The Calabrese family reached out. They want a meeting next week. Brooklyn territory dispute. What does that have to do with Sophia? They specifically mentioned her. Said they heard you had a new translator who could speak any language. They want to know if you'd be willing to loan her out for a meeting with their Russian contacts. Lorenzo's instincts flared. The Calabrese family didn't ask for favors. They probed for weaknesses. Tell them no. That'll offend them. I don't care. Anthony sighed. Lorenzo, we can't afford a war with Calabrese right now. Not with the Japanese deals expanding. We're stretched thin as it is. Then we'll stretch thinner. Sophia Carter works for me. Nobody else. Vincent stood again, buttoning his suit jacket. You're making a mistake. Not about the Calabrese, though that's going to come back to bite us, but about this girl. She's going to cause problems. She already has, Lorenzo admitted. But she's also solving them. For now, Vincent said. But what happens when the cost gets higher than the profit? He left without waiting for an answer. The other council members filed out behind him, leaving Lorenzo alone with his cracked glass and the lingering smell of cigar smoke. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Thought about your offer. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Lorenzo smiled despite himself. Even his counsel couldn't intimidate him the way this delivery girl could intrigue him. He texted back. Name them. The response came quickly. Tomorrow. In person. And bring coffee. The good kind. Lorenzo laughed, a real laugh, the first one in days. Vincent was right about one thing. Sophia Carter was going to cause problems. But maybe that was exactly what Lorenzo needed. Sophia arrived at the Vitali estate the next morning expecting another business meeting. What she got instead was chaos. A small boy, maybe 7 years old, was sitting on the marble floor of the foyer, surrounded by crumpled papers and textbooks. He had dark curly hair like Lorenzo's and the same intense eyes, but where Lorenzo's were calculating, this child's were filled with pure frustration. I hate French, the boy shouted at no one in particular. It's stupid, and I'm never going to France anyway. Tony, the guard who'd let Sophia in, looked helpless. Luca, your tutor will be here in an hour. Just wait. I don't want the tutor. She smells like old cheese, and she makes me say the same words 100 times. Sophia bit back a smile. She cleared her throat. Sounds like you're having a rough morning. Luca looked up, surprised to see a stranger. Who are you? Sophia. I work for your dad. She crouched down to his level, examining the scattered papers. French verb conjugations. Let me guess, you're stuck on irregular verbs? How did you know? Because irregular verbs are the worst part of any language. They don't follow the rules, which makes them annoying. Luca's eyes widened. Yes, that's exactly it. Why can't they just be normal? Because languages like to keep us on our toes. Sophia picked up one of his worksheets. You know what helps me? I turn them into a song. Wanna try? Before Luca could answer, Lorenzo's voice cut through the room. Luca, what have I told you about doing homework in the hallway? Sophia stood quickly as Lorenzo descended the stairs. He was dressed more casually than she'd seen him, dark slacks and a white shirt, no jacket. It made him look younger, less intimidating. Papa, this lady knows about irregular verbs, Luca announced. Lorenzo's eyebrows rose. Does she? I was just... Sophia started, but Luca interrupted. Can she help me? Please? Mrs. Duchamp makes everything so boring, and she gets mad when I ask questions. Lorenzo looked at Sophia, something unreadable in his expression. You speak French too? Among other things. Of course you do, he sighed, then turned to his son. Luca, Sophia is here for a business meeting, not to do your homework. But Papa... The meeting can wait, Sophia heard herself say. If that's okay with you, Mr. Vitali. Lorenzo studied her for a long moment. You don't have to. I know. But irregular verbs really are the worst. I'd feel guilty, leaving him to suffer alone. Luca jumped up. Yes. Come on, we can use the library. It's way better than the hallway. Before either adult could protest, he grabbed Sophia's hand and pulled her toward a set of double doors. The library was enormous, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather chairs, a fireplace that probably cost more than Sophia's annual salary. Luca dumped his books on a table and looked at her expectantly. "Okay," Sophia said, sitting down. "Show me what you're stuck on." For the next 30 minutes, she worked with Luca through his French homework. But she didn't just help him memorize, she made it fun. She taught him a silly song for the verb être. She explained that avoir sounded like avoir because if you had something, you wanted to have more. She drew pictures to help him remember.
Luca laughed.
Actually laughed. The sound was bright and genuine, echoing off the library walls. "You're so much better than Mrs. Duchamp," he declared. "Can you be my teacher instead?" "I'm not a real teacher, Luca, but you know so many languages. Tony told me you speak Japanese and Chinese and Italian and Russian and—" "Tony talks too much," Sophia said, but she was smiling. "How many languages do you know?" She counted in her head. 10, maybe 11 if you count the bits of Korean I picked up. Luca's jaw dropped. "That's like a superpower." "It's really not that special." "Are you kidding? I can barely do one." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Can you teach me some?" "Not for school. Just for fun." "What do you want to learn?" "Something cool."
"Like?"
"How do you say hello in all of them?" Sophia couldn't help herself. She went through the greetings: Japanese, Mandarin, Russian, Italian, Spanish, German, Arabic. Luca tried to repeat each one, butchering most of them, but his enthusiasm never wavered. "Now teach me how to say my dad is the coolest," Luca said. "Why?" "Because it's true." His face grew serious. "Everyone thinks he's scary. But he's not.
He's just
protective. Since Mama died, he worries a lot." Sophia's chest tightened. "I'm sorry about your mom." Luca shrugged, but his eyes were sad. "It was 2 years ago. I still miss her. She used to help me with homework too. She was good at it like you. I bet she was even better." "Maybe," he smiled a little. "But you're funnier." Mama didn't make up songs about verbs. From the doorway, a voice spoke quietly. "No, she didn't." Both Sophia and Luca turned. Lorenzo stood there, and Sophia had no idea how long he'd been watching.
"Papa.
Sophia taught me how to say hello in 10 languages." Lorenzo's expression was soft in a way Sophia hadn't seen before. "Did she?" "Show him," Luca urged. Lorenzo walked into the room, and Luca proceeded to butcher greetings in multiple languages. But Lorenzo didn't correct him. He just watched his son with something that looked almost like wonder. When Luca finished, Lorenzo ruffled his hair. "Very impressive. Now go get cleaned up for lunch. And take all these papers with you." "But—" "Now, Luca." The boy gathered his things reluctantly, then paused at the door. "Sophia, will you come back? To teach me more?" Sophia glanced at Lorenzo, unsure. He gave the smallest nod. "Sure," she said. "I'd like that." Luca beamed and ran off, leaving them alone. Lorenzo sat down in the chair Luca had vacated. He hasn't smiled like that in months. He's a good kid. He is. Lorenzo's voice was rough. His mother was better with him than I am. She knew how to make him happy. I just know how to keep him safe. Those aren't mutually exclusive, aren't they? He looked at her directly. In my world, they usually are. Sophia understood what he wasn't saying. This life, the guards, the walls, the constant danger, it was all to protect Luca.
But it was also isolating him.
He needs more than safety, she said quietly. He needs joy too. Lorenzo nodded slowly. I know. I just don't know how to give him that anymore. Maybe you don't have to do it alone. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air between them. About those conditions, Lorenzo said, changing the subject. For working with me. Sophia pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote them down. He read them, his eyebrows rising. You want access to the library? And Thursdays off to volunteer at a literacy center? Is that a problem?
No.
It's just not what I expected. He folded the paper.
Done.
Anything else? Just one thing. If I'm going to work for you, I need to know you'll keep your word. No lies, no games. Lorenzo extended his hand. No lies. No games. Sophia shook it, and in that moment, she sealed her fate with the Vitali family. 2 weeks into working for Lorenzo, Sophia had translated 3 more deals, caught 2 contract errors, and somehow become Luca's unofficial language tutor. She'd also avoided every personal question Lorenzo asked her. Until tonight. It was past midnight. Lorenzo had called her for an emergency translation. A Russian supplier had issues with a shipment. The call had gone well, the problem was solved, but when Sophia stood to leave, Lorenzo stopped her. Stay. Have a drink. I don't drink with clients. I'm your employer, not your client. There's a difference. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey anyway. Besides, you've been dodging my questions for 2 weeks. I'm starting to think you're hiding something. Sophia reluctantly sat back down. I'm not hiding anything. I just value my privacy. In my experience, people who value privacy usually have secrets. Lorenzo slid a glass toward her. Why languages, Sophia? Of all the things you could have learned, why that? She stared at the amber liquid. Because they were free. What does that mean? Sophia took a breath. She'd told this story before, to social workers and therapists who didn't really care. But something about the quiet room and Lorenzo's genuine curiosity made her speak. I grew up in foster care. 7 different homes between ages 5 and 18.
Some were okay.
Most weren't. She picked up the glass but didn't drink. The only constant was the library. Every home I lived in, I'd find the nearest library and camp out there. And you read language books? I read everything. But languages. They were an escape. When I learned Spanish, I could read Gabriel Garcia Marquez in the original text. When I learned French, I could understand Camus. Each language was like a door to a different world. Lorenzo listened, his expression unreadable. The group home I stayed in from 16 to 18 had a Russian woman working the night shift. Natasha. She'd sneak me books from her house. Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Pushkin. We'd practice together during her breaks. Sophia smiled at the memory. She said I had a gift for it. That I thought like a translator, not just a student. What does that mean? It means I don't just learn words. I learn how people think. Every language has a personality, a rhythm. Japanese is formal, layered with respect and hierarchy. Russian is passionate, built for literature and emotion. Italian is musical. You can't just translate word for word. You have to translate meaning, context, feeling. Lorenzo leaned back, studying her. That's why you're so good at the meetings. You're not just repeating what people say, you're interpreting what they mean. Exactly. So, you learned 10 languages from library books and a Russian night nurse. There it was, the skepticism she'd been waiting for. Not just them. I had other teachers along the way. A Korean grocery store owner who let me practice in exchange for stocking shelves. An Italian chef who taught me while I washed dishes. A Chinese professor I met at the library who needed help organizing files. She met his eyes. When you have nothing, Mr. Vitali, you learn to trade what you can offer. I offered my time and attention. They offered knowledge. And that's it? That's the whole story. That's the whole story. Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. My world is built on blood, Sophia. Family blood, enemy blood, money that's been bled for. Everything I have came from violence or the threat of it. He paused. But you built your world from words. From books and conversations and kindness from strangers. That's different. Different bad or different good? I haven't decided yet. Sophia finally took a sip of the whiskey. It burned, but in a good way. You don't trust me. I don't trust anyone. Not even Vincent? Anthony? Your own counsel? Especially not them, Lorenzo smiled, but it was cold. They're loyal because it benefits them. If that calculation changes, so does their loyalty. That's how this world works. Sounds lonely. It is, he said it so matter-of-factly that it hurt to hear. But it's also survival. Sophia set down her glass. Is that what you want for Luca? A lonely life where he can't trust anyone. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. I want him to be safe. Safe and isolated aren't the same thing. In my world, they are. Then maybe your world is wrong. The words hung in the air between them. Sophia expected anger, but Lorenzo just looked tired. You say you learned languages to escape, he said quietly. What were you escaping from? Sophia hesitated. This was the part she never told anyone. Emptiness. Every foster home, I was temporary. Every family, I was the extra kid. The one they took in for the check or because they felt obligated. She traced the rim of her glass. Languages gave me an identity, when nothing else did. If I couldn't belong somewhere, at least I could understand everywhere. Lorenzo nodded slowly, like he understood more than she'd said. And now? Are you still escaping?
No.
Now I'm building something. That literacy center I volunteer at, I teach immigrants English. People who came here with nothing, just like I had nothing. I help them find their words. That's why you wanted Thursdays off. That's why I wanted Thursdays off. Lorenzo poured himself another drink. You're a strange woman, Sophia Carter. You walked into my world by accident, and now you're saving my deals and teaching my son and making me question things I've never questioned before. Is that a complaint? It's an observation. He looked at her seriously. But here's mine. No orphan learns 10 languages without a reason. You say it was escape, and maybe that's true. But I think there's more to it. I think you're still running from something or towards something, and you're not telling me which. Sophia stood. Maybe you're right. Or maybe you're so used to everyone having ulterior motives that you can't recognize someone who just wants to survive. In my experience, survival is the biggest motive of all. She walked to the door, then turned back. Your son asked me today if I had a family. I told him I didn't. He said that was sad, and then he said, maybe you can share ours. You've built your world on blood, Mr. Vitali. But Luca's building his on something better. Don't ruin that for him. Lorenzo didn't respond, but something in his expression shifted. As Sophia left, she felt his eyes on her back, searching, questioning, trying to solve the mystery she represented. Let him search, she thought. Some stories were meant to stay buried. At least for now. Sophia was leaving the literacy center on Thursday evening when the black sedan pulled up beside her. Not Lorenzo's car. She'd learned to recognize those. This one was sleeker, more expensive, with tinted windows that reflected the streetlights. The back window rolled down. A man in his 50s sat inside, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her rent. His silver hair was slicked back, and he had the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. Miss Carter, would you spare a moment? Every instinct told Sophia to run. I don't know you. No, but I know you. Sophia Carter, age 26, translator for Lorenzo Vitali. He opened the car door.
Please.
I only want to talk. 5 minutes of your time, and I promise you'll walk away richer for it. I'm not interested. Not even in $50,000? Sophia froze. $50,000. That was more than she'd make in 2 years of delivery work. More than she'd ever had at once in her entire life. The man saw her hesitation and smiled wider. Just a conversation, Miss Carter. What's the harm? Against her better judgment, Sophia got in the car. The interior smelled like leather and cologne. Another man sat in the front passenger seat, silent and watchful. The driver didn't turn around. My name is Victor Calabrese, the silver-haired man said as the car pulled into traffic. I run operations in Brooklyn. Perhaps Lorenzo has mentioned me? The name clicked. The Calabrese family, the ones who'd wanted to borrow her for a meeting. The ones Lorenzo had refused. He mentioned you, Sophia said carefully. I'm sure he did. Lorenzo and I have a complicated relationship. We respect each other's territories, but we're not friends. Victor poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. However, I believe in recognizing talent when I see it. And you, Miss Carter, are quite talented. What do you want?
Direct.
I like that. Victor took a sip. I want to make you an offer. A generous one. You see, Lorenzo has an important meeting next week with some Korean distributors. A very lucrative deal, something about expanded shipping routes. You'll be translating, I assume? Sophia said nothing. I'll take that as a yes. Here's my proposal. During that meeting, you make a small error. Nothing too obvious. Perhaps you translate exclusive partnership as tentative arrangement, or you soften Lorenzo's terms just enough that the Koreans walk away offended. Sophia's stomach turned. You want me to sabotage the deal. I want you to ensure it fails. In return, I'll pay you $50,000 cash. Untraceable. You can disappear tomorrow if you want. Start a new life somewhere Lorenzo Vitali will never find you. And why would you want his deal to fail? Victor's smile turned cold. Because those Korean distributors will need a new partner. And I'll be ready to step in. Lorenzo gets embarrassed, I get the contract, and you get enough money to never deliver Chinese food again. Everyone wins. Except Lorenzo. Lorenzo Vitali has enough wins. He won't miss one deal. Victor leaned forward. Think about it, Miss Carter. You don't owe him anything. You're not family. You're not even really his employee. You're a contractor he's using for your skills. Do you really think he'd hesitate to replace you if someone better came along? The words stung because they were partially true. Lorenzo didn't trust her. His counsel wanted her gone. She was useful now, but for how long? I could make it $75,000, Victor pressed. Enough to leave New York entirely. California, maybe. Or Europe. I'm sure someone with your language skills could find work anywhere. Sophia looked out the window. They were driving through Brooklyn, past neighborhoods she'd never been to. What happens if I say no? Nothing. You walk away, we never speak again. Victor's tone was casual, but his eyes were hard. Though I should mention, other families have noticed you too. If you don't take my offer, someone else will make theirs. And they might not be as polite about it. Is that a threat? It's a reality. You've entered a world where loyalty is bought and sold, Miss Carter. The only question is, who are you loyal to? A man who doesn't trust you? Or yourself? The car stopped. They were back at the literacy center. Think about it, Victor said, handing her a card with nothing but a phone number. You have until Monday. Call me with your answer. Sophia took the card, her hand shaking slightly. She got out of the car and watched it drive away, disappearing into the night traffic. $75,000. She could pay off the debts from her last foster home that still haunted her credit. She could get a real apartment instead of her studio with the leaking ceiling. She could stop working 3 jobs just to survive. All she had to do was betray Lorenzo. Sophia walked home slowly, the card burning in her pocket. She thought about Lorenzo's face when he talked about Luca. She thought about the way Luca had hugged her yesterday after she'd helped him with his homework, whispering, "Thank you for making Papa smile again." She thought about the look in Lorenzo's eyes when he'd asked about her past, not suspicious, but curious, genuinely wanting to understand her. But she also thought about Victor's words, "You don't owe him anything." It was true. She didn't. When Sophia got home, she pulled out the card and stared at it for a long time. Then she tore it into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet. But even as she did, doubt gnawed at her. Had she just refused $75,000 for a man who would probably discard her the moment she stopped being useful? Had she chosen loyalty to someone who didn't even trust her? Worse, would Lorenzo have done the same for her? Sophia lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. She'd made her choice. She wouldn't betray Lorenzo. But Victor's offer had revealed something she hadn't wanted to face. In this world, she would always be the person people tried to buy. The girl with no family, no connections, no power. Just skills that could be purchased by the highest bidder. And that terrified her more than any threat could. The Korean meeting was set for Monday afternoon. Sophia arrived early, reviewing her notes and mentally preparing for the translation. She'd been working with Lorenzo for almost a month now, and these high-stakes negotiations were becoming routine. What wasn't routine was the way Lorenzo looked at her when she walked in. "We need to talk," he said, his voice flat. Sophia's heart skipped. About what? Victor Calabrese. The room suddenly felt smaller. What about him? Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. So, you do know who he is. You mentioned him before. The Brooklyn territory dispute. That's all you know about him. Sophia kept her expression neutral, though her pulse was racing. Should I know more? Before Lorenzo could answer, Tony entered. Boss, the Koreans are here. 10 minutes early. Lorenzo held Sophia's gaze for another moment, then nodded. We'll finish this later. The Korean delegation consisted of 3 men, led by Mr. Park, a stern-faced businessman who made Mr. Takahashi look warm by comparison. They settled around the table with minimal pleasantries. The meeting started smoothly. Sophia translated Lorenzo's proposals, navigating the complex terms of shipping routes and distribution percentages. Mr. Park seemed satisfied, his questions straightforward. Then one of his associates, a younger man with sharp eyes, leaned forward and spoke quietly in Korean. But he wasn't speaking to Mr. Park. He was speaking to Sophia. I'm curious, he said in Korean, his tone conversational. How long have you been working for the Calabrese family? Sophia's blood ran cold, but she kept her face neutral. I don't work for them, she replied in Korean.
No?
That's strange. Because I saw you getting into Victor Calabrese's car 4 days ago, outside a literacy center in Queens. The room had gone silent. Lorenzo couldn't understand Korean, but he could read body language. What's he saying? Sophia's mind raced. If she translated truthfully, Lorenzo would know she'd met with Victor and hidden it from him. If she lied, and Lorenzo found out later, it would be even worse. The Korean associate smiled coldly and switched to English, his accent thick but understandable. I was just asking Miss Carter about her extracurricular activities. What activities? Lorenzo's voice was dangerous. Perhaps she should tell you herself, the man looked at Sophia. Or should I? Mr. Park spoke sharply in Korean, clearly telling his associate to be quiet. But the damage was done. Sophia, Lorenzo said quietly. What is he talking about? Before she could answer, Vincent burst into the room with Anthony and Michael, the entire council. Lorenzo, we need to speak.
Now.
I'm in a meeting. Now, Vincent's tone left no room for argument. Lorenzo stood, his jaw clenched. Excuse me for one moment, he told Mr. Park, then followed his counsel into the adjacent room. The door didn't close all the way. Sophia could hear every word. She's a spy, Michael hissed. We have confirmation. She met with Victor Calabrese last Thursday. Got into his car, had a 20-minute conversation. How do you know this? Lorenzo's voice was controlled, but barely. We've been watching her like you asked. And before you defend her, there's more. We checked her bank records. She deposited $10,000 the day after you hired her. I gave her that money, and you gave her another $10,000 2 weeks later. But 3 days ago, someone deposited $5,000 into her account.
Cash.
Untraceable. You want to guess who? Silence. Lorenzo, she's playing you, Vincent said, his voice almost pleading. Victor approached her, probably offered her money to sabotage your deals. And from what we're seeing, she took it. She wouldn't. Wouldn't she? Anthony interrupted. She's got no family, no loyalty, nothing tying her here except a paycheck. And Victor can pay better than you can. She's a liability. We told you this from the start. She will get you killed, Michael added. If not today, then tomorrow. How long until she mistranslates something that gets you arrested? Or worse? More silence. Sophia's hands were shaking. The $5,000, that was her literacy center's payment for teaching extra classes. She could prove it. But would Lorenzo even listen? When Lorenzo returned to the meeting room, his face was a mask. He sat down without looking at Sophia. Please continue, he told Mr. Park. The rest of the negotiation was torture. Sophia translated mechanically, her mind racing. The Korean associate kept watching her with that knowing smile. Lorenzo wouldn't meet her eyes. And when Mr. Park finally stood to leave, apparently satisfied with the terms, Sophia felt no relief. As soon as the Koreans left, Lorenzo turned to her. My office.
Now.
Tony and two other guards followed them. Not a good sign. Lorenzo's office felt like a courtroom. He sat behind his desk while Sophia stood, flanked by guards like a criminal. The $5,000, Lorenzo said. Where did it come from? The literacy center. I taught extra classes. Prove it. Sophia pulled out her phone with shaking hands, showing him the email confirmation from the center's director. Lorenzo read it, his expression unreadable. And Victor Calabrese. Here it was. The moment of truth. He approached me Thursday night. Offered me money to sabotage your Korean deal. The room erupted. Vincent swore. Anthony moved toward her, but Lorenzo raised a hand. How much? Lorenzo asked quietly. 75,000. And you didn't think to tell me? I refused him. I tore up his card and came here today to do my job. You should have told me the moment it happened. Lorenzo's voice was cold. Instead, you hid it. You met with my enemy in secret and said nothing. I didn't want to worry you. You didn't want to. Lorenzo stood abruptly. Do you understand what you've done? You've made me look like a fool. My counsel thinks you're a traitor. The Koreans probably think you're a spy. And I can't defend you because you lied to me. I didn't lie. I just didn't. Omission is still a lie. He looked at her with something like disappointment. I trusted you with my business. With my son. And you kept secrets. Sophia felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I kept the secret because I knew how it would look. I knew you'd doubt me, just like you're doing now. Then you should have given me a reason not to. The words hit like a slap. Lorenzo turned to his guards. Take her home. And watch her. If she tries to contact Victor or anyone else, I want to know immediately. Lorenzo. Sophia started. We're done for today. He wouldn't look at her. I need to think about whether we're done permanently. As the guards escorted her out, Sophia caught Vincent's expression. He looked almost triumphant. She'd refused $75,000 to stay loyal to Lorenzo. And now he was treating her like the traitor she'd refused to become. 3 days had passed since the Korean meeting. 3 days of silence from Lorenzo. Sophia had been confined to translation work over the phone. No more in-person meetings. No more access to the estate. The guards still watched her apartment, a constant reminder that she was one wrong move from disappearing. Then, on Friday night at 11 o'clock, her phone rang. It's me, Lorenzo's voice was rough, tired. Can you come to the house?
Now.
Luca's asking for you. He won't sleep. I've tried everything. Sophia's heart clenched. What's wrong?
Just.
Can you come? 20 minutes later, Tony let her into the estate without a word. The house was dark except for a light glowing from the library. She found Luca curled up in one of the oversized leather chairs, his eyes red from crying. Lorenzo sat nearby, looking helpless in a way she'd never seen before. Sophia. Luca jumped up and ran to her, wrapping his small arms around her waist. You came back. Of course I did. She knelt down to his level. What's going on, kiddo? I had a bad dream about Mama. Papa said I could pick any book and he'd read to me, but none of them are right, his voice cracked. I want the one Mama used to read. The French one with the little prince. Sophia's throat tightened. Le Petit Prince. Luca nodded miserably. But I can't find it, and Papa doesn't read French good, and I just want. He dissolved into fresh tears. Hey, it's okay, Sophia held him close. I know that book. I can read it to you. You can? Of course. It's one of my favorites. She looked at Lorenzo over Luca's head. He nodded, his expression unreadable. Sophia found the book on a high shelf, a beautiful old edition with watercolor illustrations. She settled into the chair with Luca curled against her side and began to read in French, translating key passages into English so he could understand. Lorenzo sat in the chair across from them, watching in silence. Luca's breathing gradually slowed. His grip on Sophia's hand loosened. By the 3rd chapter, he was asleep. I'll carry him to bed, Lorenzo said quietly. He scooped up his son with practiced ease, and Sophia followed them upstairs. Luca's room was exactly what she'd imagined. Shelves full of toys he was too old for, posters of soccer players, a nightlight shaped like a moon. Lorenzo tucked him in, brushing the dark curls from his forehead with a gentleness that made Sophia's chest ache. Stay, Luca mumbled, half asleep. Both of you. Please. Lorenzo sat on the edge of the bed. Sophia hesitated, then sat in the chair by the window. They stayed until Luca's breathing turned deep and even. Outside in the hallway, Lorenzo finally spoke. Thank you. He's been having nightmares all week. Nothing I did helped. He just needed to feel close to her memory. The book was his connection. And you knew it. Lorenzo leaned against the wall, exhaustion written across his face. You always know what he needs. Better than I do. That's not true. It is. He looked at her directly. Can we talk? Honestly? They ended up back in the library. Lorenzo poured 2 drinks, whiskey for him, wine for her. The fire had burned down to embers, casting shadows across the room. I had you investigated, Lorenzo said without preamble. After Victor's approach, my people went back to every foster home, every job, every person you've ever known. Sophia's stomach dropped. And you're exactly who you said you are. The 5,000 was from the literacy center. You really did learn languages from books and borrowed teachers. You're not a spy, not a plant, not anything except. He paused. Except someone who survived against terrible odds. Why are you telling me this? Because I owe you an apology. I treated you like a criminal when you were just trying to protect yourself. Lorenzo took a drink. Victor is dangerous. If you told me about his offer, I would have made it worse. I would have confronted him, started a war. You were smart to handle it quietly. Your counsel doesn't think so. My counsel thinks everything is a threat. He set down his glass. But they're not wrong about one thing. You are dangerous. Just not in the way they think. What does that mean? Lorenzo stood, moving to the window. It means my son loves you. It means you've gotten inside our lives in a way no one has since his mother died. And it means he stopped, his jaw tightening. You what? He turned to face her. I trust you, Sophia. Despite every instinct telling me not to, despite my counsel's warnings, despite the fact that trust in my world gets people killed, I trust you. Sophia stood, her pulse racing. Lorenzo. I know it's insane. You've been here a month. You're not family, you're not one of us. My counsel would riot if they knew I was saying this. He moved closer. But when I watched you with Luca tonight, reading to him in his mother's favorite book, making him feel safe, I realized something. What? That you're good for us. For him. Maybe even for me. His voice dropped. And that scares me more than any rival family ever could. They were standing close now, close enough that Sophia could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. I'm just a delivery girl, she whispered. I don't belong in your world. No, you don't. Lorenzo reached out, his hand hovering near her face, but not quite touching. My world is violence and blood and broken loyalty. You're something else. Something better. Your counsel will never accept you. I know. His hand dropped. But that doesn't change how I feel. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to fully acknowledge. What are we doing? Sophia asked. I don't know. Lorenzo stepped back, putting necessary distance between them. But I know I don't want you to leave. Not the estate, not Luca, not— He didn't finish the sentence. Not you. Sophia finished softly. Their eyes met. Not me, Lorenzo confirmed. Sophia knew she should walk away. This was dangerous territory, more dangerous than any translation error or rival family. But when she looked at Lorenzo, she didn't see the Mafia boss everyone else saw. She saw a man trying desperately to be a good father. A man who carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders. A man who'd let her in despite every reason not to. I should go, she said, though she didn't move. You should, Lorenzo agreed, not moving either.
Neither of them did.
Finally, Lorenzo walked her to the door. As she left, he caught her hand.
Sophia.
Whatever happens with the council, with the other families, with any of this, you're under my protection now. No one touches you. Understand? She nodded, not trusting her voice. As she drove home, Sophia's hand still tingled where Lorenzo had held it. She was falling for him. A mafia boss. A man whose world was everything she'd tried to escape. And somehow, that felt like the most honest thing she'd done in years. The call came during Luca's soccer practice on Saturday afternoon. Lorenzo was in a meeting when his phone lit up with a video message from an unknown number. The footage showed Luca sitting in what looked like a warehouse, scared but unharmed. A distorted voice spoke over the image. The delivery girl makes you weak, Vitali. Get rid of her, or lose what matters most. The video ended. Lorenzo's blood turned to ice. He was already calling his security team when Sophia walked in for their scheduled translation session. One look at his face, and she knew something was catastrophically wrong. What happened? They took Luca. Lorenzo's voice was deadly calm, the kind of calm that preceded violence. Victor Calabrese's men grabbed him from soccer practice 15 minutes ago. Sophia's world tilted.
No.
No, this is my fault. This is Victor's fault. Lorenzo was already moving, strapping on a shoulder holster. Tony traced the video to a warehouse in Red Hook. I'm leaving now. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. He knows me. If he's scared, seeing me might help. Sophia's voice was steel. And if this is about me, then I should be there. Lorenzo looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Stay behind me. Do exactly what I say. If shooting starts, you run. Understood? Understood. The drive to Red Hook took 23 minutes. Lorenzo made calls the entire way, mobilizing his men, coordinating positions, his voice never rising above a controlled murmur. Sophia sat beside him, her hands clenched so tight her nails drew blood from her palms. He'll be okay, she whispered, maybe to Lorenzo, maybe to herself. He has to be. They arrived to find the warehouse, surrounded by Lorenzo's men. Tony met them at the perimeter, his expression grim. 4 hostiles inside, plus Luca. They're in the main floor, northeast corner. They know we're here, sent out a message saying if we breach, the boy dies. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. Demands you alone to discuss terms. It's a trap, Vincent said, appearing from behind a truck. They'll kill you both. I don't care. Lorenzo checked his weapon. I'm going in. Wait. Sophia grabbed his arm. Let me go first. Every man turned to stare at her. They want you dead, she continued quickly. But they want me gone. If I walk in, offer to leave New York, maybe they'll take the deal and release Luca. They'll kill you, Lorenzo said flatly. Maybe. But maybe they'll hesitate long enough for your men to get into position. She met his eyes. I got him into this. Let me help get him out. Lorenzo started to refuse, but Tony interrupted. Boss, she's right. If she walks in unarmed, hands visible, they might lower their guard. We can use the distraction. Every instinct in Lorenzo's body screamed against it. But Luca's life was at stake. You wear a vest, he said finally. And you do exactly what I tell you, through the earpiece. The second things go wrong, you hit the floor. 5 minutes later, Sophia was walking toward the warehouse entrance, her heart hammering so hard she could barely breathe. The earpiece was tiny, invisible. The bulletproof vest was hidden under her jacket. I can't hear you, Lorenzo's voice said in her ear. My men are in position. You're not alone. The warehouse door was open. Sophia stepped inside. I'm here, she called out.
I'm unarmed.
I just want to talk. 3 men emerged from the shadows, guns drawn. In the corner, tied to a chair, was Luca. His eyes went wide when he saw her. Sophia, he cried out. I'm here, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay. One of the men, tall, scarred, with cold eyes, stepped forward. Sophia Carter. Victor said you were brave. Stupid, but brave. I'll leave, Sophia said quickly. Tonight. I'll get on a plane and never come back to New York. Just let the boy go. The man laughed. You think this is about you? Victor doesn't care if you stay or go. This is about sending Vitaly a message. And messages written in blood are the ones people remember. He raised his gun toward Luka. Sophia didn't think. She ran. The gunshot was deafening. She felt the bullet hit her vest, stealing her breath, but she didn't stop. She threw herself between Luka and the gunman just as the windows exploded inward. Lorenzo's men came through every entrance at once. Gunfire erupted. Sophia covered Luka's body with her own, feeling him trembling beneath her. Close your eyes, she whispered. Don't look. I've got you. The firefight lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt like hours. When silence finally fell, Sophia's ears were ringing and her chest was on fire from the bullet impact. Clear. Tony's voice. Then Lorenzo was there, pulling her up, checking her for injuries. Are you hit? Bess caught it. Sophia's hands shook as she helped untie Luka. The boy launched himself at her, sobbing. I was so scared. I thought they were going to hurt you.
I'm okay.
We're both okay. Sophia held him tight, ignoring the pain in her ribs. Lorenzo knelt beside them, his hand on Luka's back. Their eyes met over the boy's head, a moment of shared terror and relief. You jumped in front of a bullet, Lorenzo said quietly. I couldn't let them hurt him. 2 of the gunmen were dead. 1 was wounded. The scarred man had escaped through a back exit, but Lorenzo's men were already pursuing. As they walked out of the warehouse, Luka refused to let go of Sophia's hand. In the car, he curled up between them, still shaking. Don't let them send her away, Papa, he whispered.
Please. She saved me.
She's family now. Lorenzo looked at Sophia over his son's head. She had a bruise forming on her cheek, her clothes were torn, and there would be a massive contusion on her chest from the bullet impact. But her eyes were clear and steady. She'd proven her loyalty, not with words, but with blood. Nobody's sending her anywhere, Lorenzo said firmly. She stays. For as long as she wants. Luka smiled through his tears and held both their hands. And for the first time since his mother died, he felt completely safe. The emergency council meeting was called for Sunday morning. Sophia wasn't supposed to be there, but Lorenzo had insisted she attend. She sat in the corner while the 6 council members filed in, their faces ranging from angry to furious. Vincent slammed the door. Have you lost your mind? Good morning to you too, Lorenzo said coldly. Don't, Vincent pointed at him. Don't act like this is normal. Your son was kidnapped because of her. Because you made us look weak by keeping some random girl with no family, no connections. She took a bullet for my son, Lorenzo interrupted. She should have never been in a position where she needed to. Anthony stood, his face red. This is exactly what we warned you about. You brought an outsider into our business, and now the other families smell blood. Michael nodded. Victor made his message clear. The delivery girl makes you weak, and he's right, Lorenzo. Every family in New York is watching this, wondering when Lorenzo Vitaly started letting women he barely knows dictate his decisions. She doesn't dictate anything. Then prove it, Vincent leaned forward. Send her away. Tonight. Give her money, relocate her if you want, but get her out of New York before this escalates into a full war. Lorenzo's eyes went dark. No. The room exploded. Are you serious? Michael shouted. Your son was tied to a chair with a gun to his head. Because of Victor Calabrese, not Sophia. Victor used her as an excuse. Anthony slammed his hand on the table. But he's not wrong. You've changed since she arrived. You're distracted. You defend her over your own counsel. You trust her with information we've earned through decades of loyalty. She's earned my trust too. In 1 month. Vincent's voice rose. Lorenzo, we've been with you for 15, 20 years. Some of us fought alongside your father. We've bled for this family. And you're going to throw that away for a girl you met because she delivered orange chicken? Sophia felt each word like a physical blow. They weren't entirely wrong. She had disrupted everything. Luca's kidnapping was because of her presence, no matter how Lorenzo spun it. You want to talk about loyalty? Lorenzo stood, his voice deadly quiet. Where were you when Marcus was losing us millions? Where were you when the Japanese deal almost collapsed? Sophia fixed in 1 hour what you couldn't fix in years. She's not one of us. Vincent roared. Maybe that's exactly what we need. The room went silent. Lorenzo continued, his voice cutting. You know what I see when I look at this council? I see men who've gotten comfortable. Complacent. You follow tradition because it's easy, not because it's right. You want to keep doing business the way my father did, my grandfather did, but times change. So, we're not good enough anymore? Michael's voice was bitter. I didn't say that. But maybe it's time we evolved. Lorenzo gestured to Sophia. She sees things we don't. She thinks differently. And yes, she's an outsider. But that's her strength, not her weakness. Her strength nearly got Luca killed, Anthony said quietly. That hit home. Lorenzo's jaw clenched, and for a moment, he had no response. She also saved him, he finally said. Threw herself in front of a bullet without hesitation. How many of you would have done the same? That's different, and you know it, Vincent said. We're soldiers. She's…
What?
A woman? An orphan? Not Italian. Lorenzo's eyes flashed. Say what you really mean, Vincent. Vincent met his stare.
Fine.
She's nobody. No family name, no reputation, no blood ties to our world. If you marry her tomorrow, she's still nobody. And the other families will never respect a boss who elevates a nobody above his own council. Then, they don't have to respect me. They just have to fear me. Lorenzo. Vincent's voice softened slightly. I'm trying to protect you. We all are. This path you're on, it ends badly. Either Victor kills her to prove a point, or you start a war defending her, or the other councils lose faith and you lose your position. There's no version of this where keeping her doesn't cost you everything. Lorenzo walked to the window, his back to the room. Sophia could see the tension in his shoulders, the weight of the decision crushing him. Maybe you're right, he said quietly. Sophia's heart sank. Maybe keeping her will cost me everything. Lorenzo turned around. But here's what I know. My son hasn't smiled in 2 years. Since his mother died, he's been a ghost in his own house. Then Sophia showed up, and suddenly he's laughing again.
Learning.
Feeling safe. That's not enough reason, Michael started. I'm not finished, Lorenzo's voice was steel. Beyond Luca, she's proven herself over and over. She's smart, capable, and loyal. She refused $75,000 from Victor to betray me. How many people in this room would have done the same? No one answered. So here's my decision. Lorenzo looked at each council member in turn. Sophia stays. She has my full protection. If anyone, and I mean anyone, tries to harm her, they answer to me. If the other families have a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly. And if we refuse to accept this? Vincent asked. Lorenzo's expression was cold. Then you're free to leave. All of you. I'll build a new council from scratch before I let you dictate who I trust. The silence was deafening. Vincent stood slowly. You'd choose her over us? Over 15 years of brotherhood. I'm choosing what's best for my family. And right now, that includes her. One by one, the council members stood and left. Vincent was last, pausing at the door. I hope she's worth it, Lorenzo. Because you just bet everything on her.
The door closed.
Lorenzo and Sophia were alone. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Yes, I did. Lorenzo turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before, vulnerability. They're not wrong about everything. You are dangerous to me, but not in the way they think. How then? You make me want things I can't have. A normal life. A family that isn't built on violence. A future where my son doesn't have to inherit an empire of blood. He moved closer. You make me want to be better than I am. Sophia's throat tightened. I'm just Don't say you're just a delivery girl. You're so much more than that. Lorenzo's hand found hers. And I just burned every bridge with my counsel to prove it. What if they're right? What if I cost you everything? Then at least it'll be my choice. He squeezed her hand. Not theirs. Sophia realized in that moment that Lorenzo hadn't just offended her. He'd chosen her. Over tradition, over counsel, over everything he'd been taught about how his world worked. And that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. The meeting with the Japanese syndicate was scheduled for Wednesday, the biggest deal Lorenzo had ever negotiated. $50 million in expanded distribution rights across the entire East Coast. Mr. Takahashi was bringing his entire board of directors, and the contract would cement the Vitali family's dominance for the next decade. It would also make them a target. Extra security, Lorenzo told Tony on Tuesday night. I want every guard we have on rotation. No one gets in without being cleared twice. Already done, boss. Tony hesitated. The council still isn't happy about Sophia being lead translator. The council can voice their concerns after we close this deal. Wednesday morning arrived cold and gray. Sophia dressed carefully, professional but not flashy. She'd reviewed the contract terms a dozen times, memorizing every clause and contingency. This meeting couldn't fail. When she arrived at the estate, the atmosphere was tense. Guards lined every hallway. Vincent and the other council members sat in the adjacent room, watching through one-way glass. They'd been effectively sidelined, but Lorenzo had allowed them to observe as a gesture of respect. Mr. Takahashi arrived with 7 associates, all wearing identical dark suits. The delegation was larger than usual, a sign of how important this deal was to them as well. The meeting began smoothly. Sophia translated the pleasantries, the formal greetings, the careful dance of high-stakes negotiation. Mr. Takahashi seemed pleased with the terms Lorenzo presented. Then one of the new guards, a man Sophia didn't recognize, brought in tea service. He set the tray down, poured for the Japanese delegation first as protocol dictated, then moved to Lorenzo's side. Something felt wrong. Sophia couldn't pinpoint what, but her instincts were screaming. The guard's movements were too careful, too deliberate. And when he poured Lorenzo's tea, his hand shook slightly. Mr. Takahashi began speaking about profit percentages. Sophia translated, but part of her mind was still on that guard, now standing by the wall with the others. Then Mr. Takahashi's senior advisor, an older man who'd been silent until now, leaned forward and spoke in rapid Japanese. But something was off. His phrasing was strange, the sentence structure awkward, like he was reading from a script. Sophia's mind raced. She'd worked with this man before during previous negotiations. His Japanese was always flawless, eloquent. This sounded coached. She translated what he'd said. We propose a 60-40 split on East Coast distribution, with the Vitali family handling all enforcement. Lorenzo frowned. That's less than we discussed. The original terms were 50-50. The advisor spoke again in Japanese, and Sophia's blood ran cold. Because he'd just said something completely different than what she'd translated. He'd said, we propose a 40-60 split, with enforcement remaining our responsibility. Someone had told him to say one thing in Japanese and expect Sophia to translate it as something else. They were trying to make her sabotage the deal by making Lorenzo reject terms he'd actually want. But who? And why? Then she saw it. The nervous guard was watching her intently, waiting for her translation. And his hand was resting on his weapon in a way that wasn't quite casual. Sophia made a split-second decision. Excuse me, she said in Japanese, addressing Mr. Takahashi directly. May I clarify something? I want to make sure I understood your advisor correctly. Mr. Takahashi nodded, slightly confused. Sophia repeated back exactly what the advisor had said in Japanese. Then she said in English, because what he stated in Japanese was a 40-60 split with enforcement remaining your responsibility. But the context of this negotiation suggests he meant 60-40 with enforcement transferring to the Vitali family. Which did you intend? The room went very quiet. Mr. Takahashi's eyes narrowed. He turned to his advisor and spoke sharply. The advisor went pale, stammering in Japanese. He clearly hadn't expected Sophia to repeat his exact words back. Mr. Takahashi's response was cold and clipped. He stood abruptly, his entire delegation rising with him. "What's happening?" Lorenzo demanded. "Your instincts were correct to be cautious," Mr. Takahashi said in English, his accent thick but clear. "It appears someone attempted to sabotage our negotiation. My advisor has been
compromised."
The advisor was sweating now, speaking rapidly in Japanese. Mr. Takahashi cut him off with a gesture, then turned to Lorenzo. "He claims he was approached yesterday, paid to create a mistranslation that would make you refuse our terms, thereby insulting us and ending the partnership." Lorenzo's expression darkened. "Paid by whom?" Before anyone could answer, the nervous guard moved. His hand went for his weapon, but he wasn't aiming at the Japanese delegation. He was aiming at Sophia. "She's too smart," he shouted. "Victor said if she caught on, I should." He never finished the sentence. Tony's bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. His gun clattered to the floor as other guards swarmed him. Lorenzo was already moving, pulling Sophia behind him, his own weapon drawn. But the threat was over. The guard was on the ground, groaning, blood pooling beneath him. "Victor Calabrese," Lorenzo said, his voice lethal. "He bribed my guard and your advisor." Mr. Takahashi's face was stone. "This is an insult to both our families." "Agreed." Lorenzo holstered his weapon. "Which is why I propose we finish this deal, then deal with Victor together." Mr. Takahashi considered this, then nodded slowly. "Your translator saved both our reputations today, and possibly our lives." "I am impressed." They sat back down. The compromised advisor was escorted out by Takahashi's men, his fate clearly sealed. Lorenzo's wounded guard was dragged away by Tony. And Sophia, still shaking from how close she'd come to a bullet, translated the rest of the negotiation flawlessly. By the time Mr. Takahashi left 2 hours later, they'd not only salvaged the deal, they'd improved it. 60-40 in Lorenzo's favor, plus a mutual defense pact against the Calabrese family. When the Japanese delegation was gone, Lorenzo turned to Sophia. "You caught it." The mistranslation. His phrasing was wrong. I knew something was off. "You saved my life." Again, Lorenzo pulled her close, right there in front of the remaining guards and his counsel watching through the glass. "Do you understand what you did today?" "My job."
"No."
"You proved that you belong here. Not just as a translator, but as," he paused, searching for the right word, "as family." Through the one-way glass, Sophia could see the council members. Vincent's expression was unreadable, but the others looked different now. Not accepting, not yet, but perhaps
considering.
"Victor's going to retaliate," Sophia said quietly. "Let him try." Lorenzo's eyes were hard. He just made this personal. As they left the conference room, Sophia realized something had fundamentally shifted. She'd proven her loyalty beyond any doubt. Now the question was, what came next? Lorenzo called a gathering for Friday night. Not just his council, but representatives from every major family in New York. The Calabreses, the Russos, the Grecos. Even families from Boston and Philadelphia sent emissaries. The Vitali estate's grand ballroom hadn't seen this many people since Lorenzo's father's funeral. Sophia stood in Lorenzo's office, watching the arrivals through the window. "What is this?" "A statement." Lorenzo adjusted his tie in a mirror. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car. After what Victor tried, the families need to understand where things stand. And where do they stand? He turned to face her. "You'll see." Downstairs, the ballroom buzzed with tension. Council members from different families clustered in corners, whispering. Sophia recognized Victor Calabrese immediately, silver hair, cold smile, standing with his people like he owned the room. When Lorenzo entered with Sophia beside him, the whispers stopped. Vincent and Lorenzo's counsel sat at the head table, their expressions carefully neutral. Luca was upstairs with his nanny, kept safely away from the proceedings. Lorenzo took his position at the podium. Thank you all for coming. I know there's been speculation about recent events. The incident with my son, the failed deal sabotage, the shifting alliances. He paused, letting the words settle. Tonight, I'm going to clarify exactly where the Vitali family stands. Victor leaned back in his chair, smirking. First, regarding Victor Calabrese, Lorenzo's voice was ice. Your attempt to sabotage my Japanese partnership failed. Your bribed guard is singing to the FBI as we speak. And your territory in Red Hook? As of this morning, it's mine. The other families have already recognized the transfer. Victor's smirk vanished. He started to stand, but the men around him, representatives from other families, remained seated. The message was clear. He was alone. You kidnapped my son, Lorenzo continued. You tried to kill my people. You violated every code we live by. Consider this your only warning. Come at me or mine again, and there won't be a third chance. The room was silent. Lorenzo's gaze swept across the gathered families. But I didn't call you here to discuss Victor. I called you here to discuss the future of the Vitali family. Specifically, a decision I've made that some of you may find unconventional. Sophia's heart started racing. For the past 2 months, I've had the privilege of working with someone extraordinary. Someone who saved a failing deal with the Takahashi syndicate. Someone who recovered $8 million in lost profit. Someone who prevented a sabotage that would have destroyed our East Coast distribution. He gestured to Sophia. Sophia Carter. Most of you have heard of her. The delivery girl. The outsider. The one my counsel said would get me killed. Vincent shifted uncomfortably. They were right about one thing. She is an outsider. She has no family name, no blood connections, no history in our world. Lorenzo's voice grew stronger. But here's what she does have. Loyalty that can't be bought. Intelligence that saved my empire. And courage that saved my son's life when she took a bullet meant for him. Gasps rippled through the room. So today, I'm making an announcement. Lorenzo looked directly at his counsel. Effective immediately, Sophia Carter is my official advisor and voice. In any negotiation, her word carries the same weight as mine. In any meeting, her judgment holds equal authority. She will have full access to family operations, full protection of the Vitali name, and a seat at my table above all others. The room erupted. You can't be serious, someone shouted. She's nobody, another voice called out. Victor stood, his face red. You're elevating a waitress above your own lieutenants? Above men who've bled for your family? I'm elevating someone who earned it, Lorenzo said calmly. Something not all of you can claim.
Vincent rose slowly.
The room quieted, waiting for his response. He'd been Lorenzo's closest friend, his most trusted advisor. If he rejected this publicly, it would split the family. He looked at Sophia for a long moment, then at Lorenzo. Finally, he nodded, just once, barely perceptible. But it was enough. The Vitali Council supports this decision, Vincent said, though his voice was strained. Miss Carter has proven herself worthy. One by one, the other council members stood. Anthony, Michael, the rest. Some looked angry, some resigned, but all of them stood. The other families watched in stunned silence. Lorenzo extended his hand to Sophia. She took it, stepping forward on shaking legs. The room stared at her, this girl who'd walked in with orange chicken and somehow changed everything. Anyone who has a problem with this can take it up with me directly, Lorenzo said. But understand this. She is under my complete protection. She is Vitali now. And anyone who forgets that will answer to me. The gathering slowly dispersed, whispers following in its wake. Victor left without a word, defeated and humiliated. As the room emptied, Luca appeared in the doorway. He'd snuck out to watch. He ran straight to Sophia, wrapping his arms around her waist. Does this mean you're staying forever? He asked hopefully. Sophia looked at Lorenzo, tears in her eyes. Yeah, kiddo. I think it does. Lorenzo took her other hand. The three of them stood there, a delivery girl, a mafia boss, and a little boy who'd lost his mother but found something like family again. Sophia smiled, shy and uncertain, but genuine. She'd come to deliver food and ended up delivering herself into a life she never imagined. A life built not on blood, but on loyalty. Not on tradition, but on choice. The council might never fully accept her. The other families might always whisper. But she had Luca's trust, Lorenzo's protection, and a place in the Vitali family that no one could take away. For a girl who'd grown up belonging nowhere, she'd finally found her home.